Epictetus, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to what happens. Shakespeare, there is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Albert Ellis. Okay, so Albert Ellis, the best years of your life are the ones in which you decide your problems are your own. You're not blaming on your mum, ecology, the president. You realise that you control your own destiny. Well, I agree with that to a point. The point I agree with that. And all of that is that obviously, in principle, fantastic. But the practicality is that life isn't always fair. Life is fragile, things happen to people, and all that sort of take responsibility stuff that has been a big theme for a while is useful to the point that you can't always get the cards that you're dealt with. The cards you're given aren't always your call. Now, someone walks across the street, they get hit by a car. Now, business doesn't go well. Things happen to people beyond their control. I think the key is how we respond. Now, life being the way it is, I think that 6.5 to 1, we're all going to experience our fair share at some point. But I think what's quite useful for me, from the point of view, is that we can choose our response. You can go 1-0 down in football. You can go 4-0 down in rugby league, 6-0 down in rugby league. Life can hand you. Someone can walk out on you in a relationship. You could lose your job. It's not in your control. People who are good at their job, they put so much effort in. They go to work one day. We don't need you no more. And that's through no fault of their own. They've done everything they could possibly do. But the key element for me is their reaction. Okay? If you end up in a situation where you end up staying at home and you ruminate and you don't do anything, then it's you that suffers. So when we talk about responsibility, for me, it's not about saying that, yeah, airy fairy Pollyanna, la 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 la, everything's wonderful in the world, because it's not. The world can be pretty damn unfair. And that's the belief, probably my belief, and I probably shouldn't share it with belief people, but the reality is that unless you've got your head in the sand and you see what goes on in the world, but the key thing for me is that we can make the world wonderful, we can make it beautiful, we can make the best that we can. Okay? The ABC and REBT, Rational Analytical Therapy, is a cognitive therapy first used by Albert Ellis, and it focuses on resolving emotional and behavioural problems. So, REBT, it divides beliefs into rational, irrational. Okay, now if you want more information on this and notes and exercise, I'm more than happy to send them through to you. Okay, so in the beginning, the ABC was the activating event, the antecedent, beliefs being rationally irrational, and the consequences emotionally and behaviourally and also physiologically. So the A is the activating event, the antecedent. The B is the beliefs about the event. The C is the consequences. Okay? Beck eventually will extend the model, or extended the model, to the ABCDE concept by including dynamics of intervention to manage negative beliefs and thoughts. The process of disputation is an integral part of the CBT protocol, which included to challenge a client's irrational beliefs by creating awareness and reflection on their meaning and consequences. The last step is to replace the old negative belief with habitual thinking patterns that are more new, more positive, and more functional thoughts in response to the activating event. Eventually, the idea is to short-circuit the instinctive reaction produced or processed by eliminating previously held unhelpful beliefs and the resulting distressing emotions and dysfunctional behaviours. So let's sort of come back to this shortly. What I would like to do is go to the model itself, and I'll sort of go into a little bit of theory shortly. So think about it this way. It's not the events, the meaning we give the events. That's the A. So let's say if someone breaks up in their relationship. Let's say they lose their job. Let's say their friend completely ignores them while they're walking down the street? Okay. Do you think people will have a different perception of that event? Yeah. Okay. So someone gets made redundant. What do you think they might think if they get made redundant? What might their beliefs be?
I'll never work again.
It's a possibility.
I'm not confident.
Yeah, there's a possibility they could do that, for sure. Equally, they might be neutral. I think, well, I've lost a job before, and okay, and I got another job. Or they might be excited. I think, great, here's an opportunity to create new. All things are relative, by the way. All things being equal. So if someone's got £100 million in back, they might react differently to someone who's sort of on the breadline. But let's take everything into account. But the point being, we can look at things differently. That will cause an emotional response. And the behavioural, so the consequence is emotional, behavioural and physiologically. Okay? The D and the E is to dispute that and challenge that. So the concept of cognitive distortions that Beck and Burns popularised, we can go into a little bit more detail. And then you can put effective new beliefs. So, okay, we take, for example, the job. You get made redundant. That's the antecedents. Okay? That's the activation. So the job loss. You lose the job. Okay? And you become, I'll never find another job again. What will I do? How will I pay the bills? I'll end up living by in a van by the river, and so on and so forth. That can spiral, can't it? So that's the trigger. Okay? That's the trigger. Then we've got the beliefs about that. I've just mentioned there. Okay, about the event. That has a knock-on effect. Okay? How do you think we'll feel if we think I'm going to end up struggling and not being able to pay the bills and I'll never find a job again? How do you think we're going to feel emotionally?
Anxious, depressed.
Yeah, precisely. But possibly, yeah. And behaviourally, what might we do?
Draw into yourself.
Yeah, I might pull my head and the pillow and not bother getting out of bed and so on and so forth. There's a big impact on me. How will I feel physically if I'm thinking at that point? Because these beliefs can be in the now, past, or imagined. How do you think it might feel? Physically, what's physiologically?
No energy.
Yeah, precisely. I can feel nervous, anxious, heart rate. Okay, and sort of, but we can look at, explore, and the good thing about the ABC model, you can apply interventions on every level. So the academic event, what you can do is stay away from the triggers. If possible, keep away. So from the ABC point of view, the model, if it's possible, keep away from the triggers. But is that always possible, do you think? Not always. So if we can't keep away from triggers, give me the strength and control I can and let go of what I can't, but maybe I can see it differently. Have a different belief. And that, when we talked about context reframe, that was quite powerful because your perception changes your world to a point. So, okay, if we believe that I've lost my job before and I've got another one, is that a more resourceful belief? Behaviourally, do you think I'll do something different? I might do my CV. I might get up in the morning and apply for a job. Okay? So emotionally, I might feel more neutral. Okay? And behavioural consequence, from a physiological point of view, I feel more centred. So we can do intervention at the A. We can intervene at the beliefs. They call it rational, irrational belief. We can intervene at belief. We can intervene at the emotion. We can intervene at the behaviour. We can intervene physiologically. There's things we can do we've talked about throughout the course and we'll go through again. And that can help a lot in more ways than one. We can do various interventions that we can use. But let's sort of look at a little bit more. So we talked about the last step is to replace the old negative beliefs and habitual thinking patterns with more positive and functional beliefs. Because the purpose really is to go from maladaptive to adaptive. That's the goal, to be more functional. So how can I function better? Okay? Eventually, the idea is to short-circuit the instinctive response process by limiting previous unhelpful beliefs, and this results in distressing emotional functional behaviours. So some of these things are under the radar. The automatic thought is under the radar at some point. So you can do things like imagery, have a thought record is quite useful. In vivo is quite useful to be able to have more of an awareness when we get the thought, the automatic thought, so to speak. So the presence of an activating event, adversity, when new helpful beliefs are utilised, causes more adaptive and functional, emotional and behavioural responses. So if I'm walking down the street at lunchtime and the activating event is, okay, if I see one of you guys tomorrow at lunchtime, if I said something today that I think might have upset you, and you know, hopefully I haven't said something today, but if I had that in mind and I see you tomorrow at lunchtime and you walk straight past me, I might think, wow, you know, is this person ignoring me? Have I said, is it what I said yesterday? And if I ruminate over that, think, goodness me, is it what I said yesterday? Did I do whatever? Then my beliefs, that could be rationally rational. Okay? If I believe that you're ignoring me, and something I said yesterday, you weren't happy about, and you're never going to speak to me again, and that's going to be it, okay, that's going to have an impact on how I feel. I might feel upset, I might feel angry, I might feel a number of different things, but behaviourally, I might then send you a text. Probably irrationally, we've all done that, we've all sent, I'm sure, irrational texts and emails and said things to people that we probably want to take back. Like I send an email, you know, why the hell are you ignoring me? And you might send me a text saying back, I wasn't ignoring you, but now I will. But the point being is that, you know, a more rational thing might be, okay, are you okay? I sent an email, did you see me? I saw you. And you might say, I did see you, sort off. But equally, you might not. But the point being is that it's a more adaptive response, if that makes sense. Okay, so it's a more adaptive response, a more functional, emotional response than what it would be originally. And that can be the one way to reappraise the situation, because if you went tomorrow at lunchtime and you saw another member of the group and said, oh, such and such walked straight past me, and you give me a call and say, Jim, you wouldn't believe it. I just saw somebody from the group and they ignored me, and I thought we were really good friends in the group, and I say, well, have you thought they might be preoccupied? They might not have seen you. They might have something else going on in their life. Oh, that's a good point, Jim. I'll send them a text to see if they're okay. So you change. Okay? From that point of view, so what's really useful for me about this model is it emphasizes the relation between our thoughts, our feelings and behaviours, and how problems can be maintained by vicious cycles. It's all sort of meshed in. Okay, so it's all like, you know, all your thoughts, they're all meshed in with your feelings and behaviour. It's all, and this helps you to just sort of pull everything out a little bit. Okay? If you could just pull everything out a little bit and just, okay, can we sort of get a clearer distinction of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling or emotions, my behaviours, and just examine them in a little more detail. Okay, because it's a vicious cycle. Okay? So it provides the essential rationale for adjusting how we think and how we behave to improve how we feel. How I feel will have a big impact on how I behave. How I feel about myself. If I feel good about myself, I'm going to behave differently to if I feel angry and upset. If I feel confident, if I'm in a better place or even neutral, I'm going to be different to what I am if I'm really upset or angry. I'm not saying that it's not useful to feel upset and angry, because it is, and it serves a purpose. And we're meant to feel. We're human beings. We're going to feel. Just don't stay there longer than you need to. If nothing else, anger, frustration can be a driving force for change. But equally, where it becomes a problem is if you stay angry with everyone in the world and everything else, it could be a bit of a problem. Okay, it could be potentially an issue And if you can't change the situation, when you teach someone the process, at least you get some control back. Well, I can't control whether you say hello to me tomorrow or not. What I can control is my response. Because I can personalise it and think it's about me. I can think, okay, well, it might be about you. Or it might be a bit in between. Who knows? I could blame. I could magnify it. I could do any number of things, but I can control what I can. Okay? So one of the objectives of, because it is a CBT model, or REBT, is to apply a systematic and standardised process in order to interrupt such a cycle by identifying and correcting the incorrect thinking patterns and beliefs that we underlie. Okay, and I mentioned earlier, some of these are automatic and we're not even aware, and under the radar. Okay, they are under the radar. The core beliefs lead to helpful and unhelpful thinking, which determines the nature of emotions and feelings that are generated as a result. Such negative core beliefs are most often associated with repeated distressing experiences in our past. Hence the process we did earlier, the young gentleman earlier, we went back in the past and we see how a past experience, a past schema, okay, still has an impact now. An intelligent young man with an abundance of capabilities, like a loom, you know, the heirloom that floats. It's like the ghost of the past is in the present. But you're not 5 no more. You're not the person you were then. Who you are now is not who you were then. It's just one experience. One experience. Okay? Can shape our reality. But there's nothing wrong with that. Equally, what's important is if you want to change and you want to achieve an outcome, it can haunt our now. So some of these things, that beliefs we have, they're in the past, some are now, some are imagined. They're automatic, outside our radar, unconscious, not Freudian unconscious, unconscious being outside our awareness. So they may have served the purpose of the past. It may have worked then. It easily can become out of sync with our reality and our truth later on and continue to harm ourselves and others in life. So, you know, if you carry on being angry, frustrated, and you can't take out your anger about what happened to you 20 years ago and everybody else, how will that bode with relationships with people? Do you think it's going to have a good impact? So something happened to you years earlier, and you have every right to be angry in certain situations, but sort of carrying it on, every right to be upset. No one's saying otherwise, but equally going forward, in the end, one thing to consider, if I have a hot coal, if some dude outside upsets me, and there's a piece of hot coal, who am I going to burn if I try and throw it at the person? I'm burn myself. In a snake bite, it's not the bite that kills people, it's the venom. The venom people carry inside harms themselves more than anybody else. And that links back to events in people's lives. So CBT, thoughts and feelings, are very important signals to how we interpret and react to situations. Our appraisal. I mentioned earlier about regression being a great way to reappraise the situation, because cognitively, how reliable are memories anyway? It's just your perception at that time. It might not have been the case. Have you ever been in a situation where you've talked to a family member about the past and you thought one thing and they thought another, and they said, that's not the case. And they're like, really? Oh, we didn't know. No, that was never the case. It was your interpretation. So cognitively, memories aren't reliable. The map of the territory and all that sort of stuff, they're not reliable memories. So you can reappraise situations, see it differently, and break away from the chain. Break away from that thinking pattern if you want to. They are helpful for the client, is empowered to challenge them and reject them and change them. Aaron Beck then came up with these terms, cog distortions. Now, we won't go into all of them, but if you want more information on them, I can email you, but I can give you a bit of an idea in terms of how we can sort of skim over it. So these aren't exhaustive, and George Burns in the Feeling Good Handbook popularised them, but black and white thinking in extremes, they're quite useful, and we can elicit them. Making unfair comparisons, filtering, personalising, mind reading, catastrophizing, overgeneralising, confusing fact and feeling, labelling. So one time I was delivering a course, I was delivering components of CBT to education staff at a care home organisation. One of my remits was education, one of them was deliver some training on certain days. And the person who was assigned to deliver with me was very talented, very bright. You know, for confidentiality, I won't mention who they were, so we'll give them a pseudonym. But she was really, really bright, really intelligent, really academic. Delivers training with me. One day, she's very intelligent, and she was standing in for someone else, and they did evaluation, because I had to do evaluation, and at the end, one person gave a negative evaluation. About 20 people, one person went negative evaluation, and she felt really down about that. It opened up a schema. But 19 were great, but one was negative in one respect, and she really focused on that. And then she started making unfair comparisons, comparing herself to I'm not blowing my own trumpet as a trainer, but I've been doing it for a long time. But you've got evaluations that are negative. I said, thanks for telling me that. I've got more negative ones than what you have for some reason, which I'm concerned about. But she goes, you take one of the ducks back. I said, well, I've been in the game for a while, but equally, we can start filtering and forget the positive. And I said, I filter it. I'm going to focus on the good ones. And the ones that aren't so great, well, they might have a point, they might have a point. What I can control, I will. They're going to moan about the coffee. I don't bloody make it, for goodness sake. They're going to moan about the weather being too hot on that day, not my fault. Blame it on God, not me. So what I can do, if they have genuine concern, fine. I'll do my best to change it, but she's focused is one. Not the 19 good ones. She's just ruminating and personalising it. Mind reading, I bet they don't like me, and I bet it's me, and fortune telling, and catastrophizing, and I'll never be able to present again, and this will be it. And I mess up all the time, overgeneralizing and confusing fact with feeling. I feel I could never do this again. I feel they don't want me to do it, and labeling it, I'm hopeless. So I suppose, to cut a long story short, with her, even though she knew all this, she still struggled to sort herself out, because a week later she comes back to deliver again. She goes, I can't deliver, Jim. Okay, well, take a seat, and we'll talk about it later. But equally, when we sort of went through this, I set up a behavioural experiment for her. I said, go join Toastmasters. You're probably going to think I'm commissioned now. But I said, go join and ask speakers who are great what they do, just where they started from. Everyone starts somewhere. We all start somewhere, even the best speakers in the world. And I'm not one of those. The ones that Toastmasters can be. And she speaks to them, and they start somewhere. And she had a realisation, well, actually, you know what? So I was sort of peeling away her belief, okay? Because that belief's going to stop her from going A to B. She's here. You want to go here, but that's in the way. So you can sort of challenge these, you can restructure these, as well as doing some restructuring processes. We also did other stuff too. I sort of did some regression, because I like regression, in case you haven't noticed. And it helped her to break away anyway from that, at that point. But that's another story for another day. But it's easy to fall into these traps. You ought to recognise some of these. Okay, you probably have some of these. You recognise people using these. We all do it. No matter who you are, we all do it. It's a spectrum. So by understanding each type of the irrational thinking, the therapist is able to guide the client, identify what's helpful, not unhelpful. You can see it then. What is helpful, what's not helpful. Okay? And the premise was, don't believe everything you think. Okay? Don't believe anything. So looking at the ABC model again, we all sort of clear on the model. The A is the activating event. Okay, what happens, the adversity. The B is our beliefs about the event. And they can be irrational, rational, unhealthy, healthy, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. But you've got beliefs about the event. That, in turn, that in turn has a consequence emotionally, behaviorally, and physiologically. In Jim's world, what I do sometimes is, when I use this model, what's quite useful is I can do interventions at every level too. Okay, so the young man says, I'm really nervous about the game, or the martial arts competition, about the presentation, so we can understand what their beliefs about are, then we can understand what's rational, irrational, and we can talk about the belief, or beliefs, or the BS, belief system they have, the emotion, how they feel. We can do techniques, we've done techniques, you've seen techniques on the course, you know plenty of those in this group to work at this level. Okay, behavioural techniques as well you can do. So okay, behaviourally we can address the issue and examine the behaviour. Maybe they withdraw from presentation. Maybe they don't play the game. Maybe they don't play the best they can play. So we give them some behavioural strategies. Physically, we can do the breathing technique, or manage to breathe, or go for the walk to do endorphins in the brain, or exercise and stuff like that, or punch the air like some people do. But you can see the knock-on effect. But equally, you can sort of gauge. You can then break it to the small chunk. You can break it in chunks. And for me, it's quite useful because you can break the problem down. And that sort of mesh, that horrible mesh we sort of get caught up in, you can sort of see, this is a belief, this is how it's affecting me. Okay, what am I going to do about it? What can I do? Okay, a shift in belief. And you guys are talented and very, very good at shifting beliefs. Okay, and you've got methods to do that and be more aware of that. But there are other ways we can do that. There's many ways. There is the approach we record the belief, rationalize it, and replace. So what you can do is record what the belief is. So, okay, you can record, you can even label it, so that's catastrophizing it. And then you can rationalize it and replace it. So, okay, you can record the belief. You don't have to get the person you're working with to have a label for it, but you can have a label you want, and then you can rationalize it and replace it. That's one thing you can do, or they can go away and do. It's an option. If you want to, record, that's what it is. Rationalize it, replace it. That's one thing to think about. Okay. So Aaron Beck, we talked about the distortion thinking. It was his concept, and Burns popularised it. And our organisation, as you can see here, that sort of cycle, that pattern. So we can see here now, it's the situation. So you can decide what's helpful and unhelpful. Okay, what you want to keep, and the core belief and the thoughts. And these beliefs can be past, the ghost of the past, the present, the imagine, and see the sort of feeling it has, the impact it has. So what I want to do now is do an exercise before we break for lunch. So an external event can act as a trigger to activate the underlying schema. So we saw an example of a schema when I did the technique that was from early on in life. So schema, cutting a long story short, because we're going to break for lunch. So fire, hot, it's an association. You won't put your hand in fire if you've been burnt before. So it's your own structure, reality. We talked a little bit about schemas the other day. So, I mentioned about the dog scenario. If you had a dog at 5-year-old, it was a loving dog, and so on and so forth. If you saw the same type of dog, you'd probably react in the way you know to react. And equally, if you were bitten by that type of dog, then you see the same type of dog, and then you're going to react accordingly. And if you didn't have the experience, you'd be neutral. But the same, if I talked about a kitchen, you'd know what to find in the kitchen based on your reality. If I went to a jungle somewhere and they didn't have an experience of a kitchen, they wouldn't know. Equally, if we went to a jungle that had their own system, we wouldn't know. So, okay, so really, what I would say, you can hear the narrative. Listen to people's narratives. The story people tell themselves will tell you a lot about this distorted thinking. Okay? One can listen to one's narrative. Our thoughts offer like a background narrative, and we tend to spend more time focusing on how we feel rather on our thoughts themselves. The situation, the thoughts, and the feelings all tend to roll together rather than considered as separate interrelated components. Separating them out, the negative thoughts, and connecting to how we feel is one of the first skills to be learned. Okay? The gap between impulse and action. How we feel. Okay? Thoughts, emotion. How we think, how we feel. You can draw a column. What are my thoughts about that event? How do I feel about that event? What are my thoughts about that big game coming up? How do I feel? What are my thoughts about that martial arts tournament? How do I feel? What are my thoughts about the presentation? How do I feel? What are my thoughts about the interview? How do I feel? Okay, so schemas are not directly observable but can be inferred by observing behaviour and exploring thoughts and feelings, according to Mr. Aaron Beck, 1964. Okay, so Beck defines schemas as a stereotyped or repetitive patterns of conceptualizing. They regard as manifestations of cognitive organizations and structures that are relatively endured components of conditions. Okay, 1964. In other words, the schema is a structure that is involved in screening, coding, and evaluating incoming stimuli. In essence, it presents the way an individual interprets experiences meaningfully, adapts to external reality, and responds accordingly. Raw input data is molded into thoughts and feelings to act as motivators for behaviour, but may not necessarily be effective or appropriate for new circumstances. Schemas are not directly observable, but can be inferred to by observing behaviour and exploring thoughts and feeling, hence how we process earlier. And hence what I mentioned earlier about your brain's designed to keep you alive. It's goal-directed, avoid pain, go towards pleasure. Outcome is keep you survival. Okay, so let's do a technique before we break for lunch. And you can practice if you want to. I can send you an email this technique as well if you don't have. It's a really good technique. Okay, so let's have a go at this process. So think of a situation in the past or present that's bothering you. Okay, something that's you feel, a feeling you've got. If you have a situation that's bothering you, I can give you a few of my ones. I've got plenty of them, so I'll borrow you some of mine. As long as I don't give them back, you keep it if you want. Plenty of things that I'm okay now, but what's been bothering me this morning is as I'm driving down the Pennines, as you do, a little bit snowing up in the Pennines this morning, beautiful, really, really nice scenery, but there was someone in the four-wheel drive that wouldn't back off. I'm not having all four-wheel drivers, but this particular person didn't realise that they can go faster than me. They can go faster than me on those hills. I can't go as fast as they can on those hills, and they were driving this much behind me all the way through. Until I rolled the window down and I thought, gap between impulse and action. Jim, just shut up because they couldn't, don't go there, as you do. But I'm okay now. I'm okay.
You don't want to talk about
Until I drive in and I see a four-wheel drive. But I see a wonderful person come out of the car, so I was okay. My anchor collapsed then. I breathed, yeah. But it just brought me back to these sort of old wounds I've had you know, as you do. But there we go. So let us have a go at this technique. So the situation, you know, what happened, where, with whom, and how. And sort of, we can have a go at that, and you can follow it if you want to. And we'll sort of go, and the last 10 minutes before lunch, you can have a go at technique. So the situation could have been at work, could have been, like I mentioned, that girl, the presentation. What happened, where, you know, the bad review, when, with whom, and how. And you can do this technique with people as well as work. And rate the mood from 0 to 100. What emotion did I feel? And how? So it could be 100 being high. 100 is high on the emotion, but 0 is low. And maybe it could be, we talked before, it could have been an interaction with somebody, a disagreement, whatever. And maybe it's like 100% the emotion, 0 to 100, okay? How intense was it? And this is separating the thought and the feeling and the whatever. Okay. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Okay. We all good so far? Yeah. And I'm hoping this doesn't involve me, but okay. Where did I notice in my body? Where do I feel it physiologically? So this goes back to the physical in the ABC. The physiology, where do I feel it in my body? It could have been here. It could have been there. It could have been anywhere for that matter. So where did I feel in the body, the sensation? And you know from your NLP and hypnosis that you can do some work with this as well. You can dissociate from it, you can breathe it out, you can push it away, turn the colours down, and so on and so forth, if you choose to. And if you have got something lodged physically, then you can just imagine dissociating it and putting it on a chair. And if you want to, you can even have a go at the chair, or the avatar that represents the feeling on a chair. So I could, take the emotion out, say I'm feeling it here. If I'm feeling it here, that dude that was driving about half a metre behind me, I could take it out and put it here and just have a good rant and get it out, throw the bad food out of the fridge. What the heck? While I'm at it, I might even do that. Do that. Why not? Do that as well. But let's not get too, as you do. So, okay, the unhelpful thoughts. What went through my mind? What disturbed me? Okay, what did those thoughts, images, memories mean? Only what it means to you about the situation. What I respond to, what button is this pressing for me? What could be the worst thing about that? Best thing, most realistic. So once again, with here you can do what we did before about dissociating, turn the sounds down, the images, challenge the thoughts. What buttons are pressing? Okay, what's the most, the best thing that could happen, most realistic, the worst thing? It's all good and well saying that it's your perception of the event, and it's to a point, but sometimes you get fired in the limbic system. You're only human. You get angry, you're upset, someone says something, they press a button, you're only human. The way the mind works, they can press a button. It can start a whole catalyst of events. Now we've all got, I say we all, I don't know about all of us, but I certainly have people who can say what they want, and it goes in one out the other ear. There's some people don't have to mutter a word. I'm like a volcano, depending on that person. We've all got the scenario where, it might be a parent. Doesn't matter who else says it, but you've got a parent, they've got to say one word, you think, oh goodness, or your teenager. Anyone else says anything, it's like, whatever, they've just got to roll their eyes and it's enough to, as you do. So we've all got people who know which buttons to press, I'm afraid. And you're a human being. Unless you're our yoga master here, who sits like this and Peace. I want to mold this guy. He always seems happy and friendly. I could do a bit of that. He sits there. It's okay. This just happened. It's okay. Leave it. Let it go. Let it go, man. You know, I'm trying to get to there. I don't know if I'll get there.
One day.
One day. The promised land.
Charge £55 an hour.
I'll get there. I'll get there. I'm there now. I'm there. See, that's a good tactic. Just put your prices up. And people soon get sorted out their problems out. I assure you that. I've got no problems now. Yes, you have. And you can do like the alternate view to stop to take a breath and ask, is it fact or opinion? Because, you know, is it a long way to walk from here to the end of the room? Well, it could be if you've got a condition medically, but it might not be. So if you've got a broken leg, it might be a long way to walk. But, you know, a fact opinion, is it 10 metres? Well, it is if the tape measure says so. Is it a tough game? What's an opinion? Okay? You know, we can frame things how we want. I heard someone say the other day, the bigger they are, the harder they fall in sport. I said, you're right. It's just getting them down there's a problem. No. You know, they fall pretty damn hard, but you try to get them down. You get them down, and I'll just come over the top and pretend I've done the dirty work, the tackle. So is it fact opinion? What would someone else say about the situation? That's really useful because you externalise it then. Because we're good at giving advice, but we just don't take our good advice. If any of you like me, I'm great. I'll give you the best advice in the world. Do the opposite to what I've done in my life and you'll be fine. But the point being is that we're good at giving it, aren't we? But we can sometimes take our own. Yeah, it's quite useful. The bigger picture, that's going back to what we said the other day, the abstraction. I mean, really the bigger picture. You know, in 1 billion years from now, will it really matter? Or in 5 billion years, if we're going to, you know, get all deep and meaningful on a Sunday. Another way of seeing it, what advice you give someone else, is my reaction in proportion to the actual event as important as it seems? Now, all these questions, they're not exhaustive, and you might make use of one of them, but they won't work for everybody. Okay? It won't work for everybody. And I think you've got to decide which questions you'll use and when and how you use it. Okay? And at the end of the exercise, we do what's the best response. Okay? And re-rate the emotion. So if you're at 100, you might come down to 50. Or you might go to 110 after the exercise. And a lot of good exercises then, but generally speaking, you're going to go down lower. You have time then. That breathing space. Do you re-rate the emotion? What could I do differently? What would be more effective? What will be the most helpful for me in this situation? And what will the consequences be of what I do? Okay? So really, really useful process. I'm not saying it's the be-all end-all, by the way, and I'm not saying anything is, but I think it's useful. If you've got like a client, for example, it's a really good exercise for them to take away and do and carry on doing. Because life being the way it is, I'd like to say that we can all live happily ever after, and the world is wonderful, and we'll never have a challenge ever again. Pollyanna might say that, but in my world, my belief is the world isn't that sort of party, I'm afraid. It ain't that sort of party. Don't work that way. I think that you've got to find the character strength to take the issues on. I think we sort of see a lot of people look for the easy way out, and the easy way out ends up being the hardest way in the long term. Sometimes you just got to take it on and do the best you can. And life being the way it is, I think it's really important for me. I'm a big advocate of doing stuff outside the practice session. If I've got someone for an hour, I would advise they go away and keep working. Because you know what? In the health industry, for example, nutrition, they don't eat one good meal there. Great. The gym industry, you don't do one gym session, you're great. You don't do one yoga session, you're a yoga master. It takes time, you know? So same as this, I think for me, the mind, you give them stuff to do. Away. To
carry on doing this stuff, the mental skills training. And this is a useful thing to use, because you know in life you're going to be faced with situations, and this sort of separates that mesh. The situation gives you breathing space, your emotion, and you can reassure the person it's okay to feel sad and upset and angry. It's okay. You normalise it. It's a normal reaction to feel that way. It's knocking the door. It's telling you something's not right. And the brain's implicit. It could be something you see. The activating event could be social media. It could be you walk down the street and you see someone who looks similar to someone else you know. It could be someone cuts you up on the road. It could be a number of things in life. It could be a presentation coming up. It could be a meeting coming up. Rate your mood, the feeling. Okay? If you feel nervous, it's okay. Just don't stay there for longer than you need to. Okay? The body, the physiological part, remember the model? The physiological part, ABC? The thoughts.
It's good for uncovering things, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
I did it in my head over something that I thought was something and nothing because I couldn't think of anything. And then when we went through them, we were like, oh my God, that's
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah, no, precisely. It's quite useful in that respect, in a positive way.
Yeah.
So if we're going to take action in a positive way, we can sort of move forward and get more self-awareness. And you guys, who are a very talented group who bring your own skills to the party, can utilise your own skills within there. You can utilise your own skills. You'll know more than me about what you can use from your own modality here. And it might be you go for a walk. It might be you do breathing. It might be you do a gentle hypnotic trance. It might be you do NLP. The submodality, the phobia release technique. There's many things you can do. It might be here that you have your own way of challenging the thought. You might use Socratic questioning. You might use meta model. You might use sleight of mouth. Here. Alter the belief. You might use content reframe, context reframe. You might do a hypnosis, like we did earlier. But it separates the thought and the emotion, and then we can move forward. Okay, so we're going to break for lunch now. It's been a really good morning so far. So